this session of energy and natural resources while we wait for other members to appear. And I don't know the schedule of presentations, but you do. Is Matt first? Come on up.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator. I'm Matt Leahy. I'm the Public Policy Director for the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests.
And I'm Barbara Richter with the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions.
And so this morning, the purpose of Barbara and I's appearance before you this morning is just to let the committee know about a report which the Conservation Commissions, Forest Society, Nature Conservancy, New Hampshire Timberland Owners, who else? The
Land Coalition.
The New Hampshire Land Trust Coalition, New Hampshire Audubon, and SPACE, which is the organization that advocates for current use, put together recently about the value of open space in New Hampshire. And I handed out to the committee, that's a summary PowerPoint of the full report. I didn't print out the full report. It's much lengthier, has a lot of references and footnotes, but I will send a copy of that to the committee so you can also have that. But really what we, and we do appreciate, this, the time this morning. We just really wanted, and again, the purpose here is just to let the committee know about this report. I mean, this committee obviously, touches on so many issues relative to land, water, air, all those natural resources. And so, this report attempts to, highlight and illustrate, some of the benefits, or I hope all the benefits that open space provides New Hampshire. And, just as, a few examples, for you, which is in the PowerPoint, also in the full report. It does talk about, the value of, for example, the forest products industry. There's a section on agricultural and New Hampshire farmland and, the jobs and the economic output. But of course, there's outdoor recreation, and Barbara will talk a little bit more too about, some of the, natural services, water resource protection. I think you'll also hear from Andrea and Michelle a little bit more about, our water resources here in New Hampshire. I'll stop there for a second. I'll let Barbara jump in, and then be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you for your time this morning. We really appreciate being able to open up the report that was recently done. As you'll see in the report, I just do want to highlight a few of the really major pieces of information that are important to New Hampshire. The outdoor recreation economy accounts for $3.9 billion in value added annually to the state. And aside from some of the economics that you'll see in the report, I think it's also important to really think about those vital services that our natural areas provide to the state of New Hampshire. Natural areas provide ecosystem services such as flood storage, protecting drinking water, moderating temperatures, and improving air quality. Flooding is one of the most expensive natural hazards here in New Hampshire, with about $200 million in total losses from 2000 to 2019. Undeveloped land helps to control flooding by storing and slowing runoff from those heavy rainfalls, which reduces the impacts of floods. Wetlands are critical for flood control and storage. The economic value of a single acre of wetland is $150,000 to $200,000 per acre, and that's estimated by New Hampshire DES, looking at both groundwater recharge and flood storage. Providing clean drinking water is another critical service that natural areas provide. Protecting our water sources from development and contamination is an effective way to ensure that clean drinking water is available for everyone. Land conservation in the Piscataqua Salmon Falls watershed provided an estimated $40 million in avoided treatment costs over the 10-year period. Extreme heat is another issue that we're facing more and more in New Hampshire. Extreme heat causes reduced productivity in the workplace and a range of health problems, including heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and even death. Areas shaded by trees and other green space can be anywhere from 20 to 45 degrees cooler than those hottest unshaded areas. And because natural areas moderate temperature, places like parks and forests can reduce energy demand of nearby buildings by 10%. Air pollution is another significant and expensive problem that impacts human health and damages our natural and built environment. Trees and shrubs have the ability to remove pollutants from the air. New Hampshire trees were estimated to remove 115,000 tons of air pollution in 2010, resulting in improved human health valued at $44.1 million. So these are just a few of the highlights I wanted to talk about from the report, but I do encourage you to take a look at the full report. We'll be emailing that link to that instead of printing it out, page by page here. But it has some really great information to support the protection of our natural resources here in New Hampshire. So thank you.
And so again, yeah, thanks. Yeah, any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer those. But like I said, and like Barbara said, I will send a full report to the committee so you can, when you have time, it's much lengthier than the PowerPoint we presented, but it has additional references, cites some of the studies, other backup information, which may be helpful.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So I read last year that New Hampshire is 84% forested. And I'm just wondering if you know what percentage of that is private versus public forest?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So about 70 or 72% is privately owned forest. And that's a big range. It could some of the large landowners, but a lot of it's also just, smaller landowners, family forest landowners, but about 72% is privately owned forest land.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why the New Hampshire Timberland Owners was interested in being a part of this group, because of that number, that it's important for these private forest landowners to have that recognition. So.
I have another question.
Yep.
An arborist I know told me that management of trees is really management of water. And you make the point in this survey that wetlands or open spaces manages water. But to what extent are open spaces versus trees more important for water management?
Yeah, but I don't know if Barbara, you have an insight, but I mean, that's a great question. I'd say if you look at some of a few of the public water supplies in New Hampshire, like Concord, for example, Manchester, they have protected around, there, like here, Pinnacle Lake is totally protected, and it is, more or less, trees down to the water line, forested down to the water line, and that does help. Having the root system does help, again, filter out stuff that may be flowing down towards the water. So I'm not sure I can give you a definitive answer, but certainly having forested areas around these important water resources is important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, having a vegetative buffer around any of your wetlands or surface water is really going to help protect them so much more than trying to, purify that water after the fact in a treatment facility. So it's definitely a good thing to consider when you're trying to protect your clean drinking water. And having you know, versus just open space, meaning fields. It's interesting, different people have different ideas of what open space is, and we're kind of incorporating trees in the open space as well,
Oh. Okay.
but yeah, you know, open space provides diversity, you know, for community and for habitat. So, so it's good to have both, you know, essentially,
Yeah.
because having that diversity is going to help create a more resilient community and more resilient ecosystem in the long run.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who's next? Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Andrea Lamoureux, President of New Hampshire Lakes.
Michelle Tremblay, President, Board of Directors, New Hampshire Rivers Council.
Great, and thank you for having us this morning, Senators. You just received a packet of information, some recent articles about our lakes, a most recent water quality report from the Department of Environmental Services. What I was hoping to do in just the next couple minutes is give you an update on some of the trends we're seeing in our lakes and rivers, and then give you sort of a sneak peek at some of the bills that you might see come across your committee this coming session. So our lakes and rivers are continuing to be threatened by cyanobacteria. I'm sure you're aware of what cyanobacteria is at this point. It was another not so good year for our lakes for cyanobacteria. Senator McConkey, Province Lake in your neck of the woods had a cyanobacteria warning for over a month and a half. Winnipesaukee had cyanobacteria outbreaks throughout the lake again this summer. So that is one of our top concerns here is what can we do to help reduce the pollution that's causing the cyanobacteria blooms. So you will see some bills this coming session. I know Senator Waters is working on a bill that will help municipalities work together on surface water quality issues, including cyanobacteria. And you'll see some bills most likely having to do with raising funding for the cyanobacteria mitigation and loan grant program that was created by the legislature a couple of years ago, but is now depleted. The funds have been depleted. So we're working creatively across the aisles to try to figure out how to get that fund some sustainable funding. So you'll hear some bills about that. The other concern, both our lakes and rivers are becoming saltier. They're meant to be freshwater, and saltier presents a number of concerns. Ecologically speaking, science is showing that our saltier waters may be favoring cyanobacteria, contributing to the problem, and also favoring or conducive to the spiny water flea, which is a new invasive animal. You may remember it was found in Winnipesaukee and Winnisquam a couple of years ago, but now was just recently found in Newfound Lake. There's an article hot off the press today in your packet. And so spiny water flea is a concern, and again, may be connected to favoring the increasing cyanobacteria. So you'll see, again, this session, some bills related to trying to regulate or reduce or provide incentives for folks to use less salt. And I won't get into specifics, but certainly if you want to know more about what we know at this point, I'd be happy to fill you in. And obviously during this session, if you have any questions about our lakes and rivers and salt, we'd be happy to be a resource. And I guess I would say, you know, again, for New Hampshire Lakes, one of our top concerns or priorities is trying to find funding for that cyanobacteria mitigation and loan and grant fund to help our communities, our lake associations, our water suppliers take proactive measures to reduce the contributors to cyanobacteria and then also to remediate it. There's lots of lake associations and communities that know what to do about this problem. They just don't have the resources, and we know we can't rely on state and federal funding at this point to help solve the problem. So with that, I'd like to turn over to my partner Michelle to add in some additional details.
I want to start by saying that it's a sort of a little known secret that I live on a pond, so support the New Hampshire Lakes Association, New Hampshire Lakes work. And the reason I live on a pond is because I know how volatile rivers are, and so I love them, but I would never live on one. And that gives me the distinct advantage of tying in what all these experts have said, that for the top of our list, we are actively trying to help the Dams Bureau with their work on dam safety and removing dams. And I did want to add that on record, there are about 5,300 dams, and about 2,600 of them are active. 814 of them are high risk. Privately owned is about 75%, and municipal is 14. The rest are state and federal. So as is the case with forested lands, the burden often lies with private ownership, and we want to help them. Many of them don't want that burden anymore. They want them removed. Assisting with state dams is the state's duty, but to be able to have the funding to remove those dams with willing landowners is really important. So I'll invite you on October 16 to the State Rivers Management Advisory Committee meeting, where not only will we be meeting in Manchester to have a presentation on successful dam removals, but we'll be touring one of those areas. I also want to talk a little bit about what you heard from Barbara and Matt, which is that wetlands are really an important storage. And so dam removal ties into that really well, because there are a lot of areas where, for instance, with the McQuestion removal, there was kind of that inch deep and mile wide pond, and there was frequent flooding in a very heavy commercial area. Removing that created flood storage, and that's really important now with dam safety, where we have more and more flood storage in those areas. The last thing I'll want to talk about is very quickly the cyanobacteria and harmful algal blooms. They're not just for lakes anymore, they are in rivers. And so the Blackwater River was the first in the state reported with that. I think the more that we look, the more that we're going to find with both of those. So working together with lakes is really important for that, as well as invasive species. And I'll touch upon briefly, because this is more in rules now than in legislation, but threatened and endangered species has become a real issue for all of us, and it crosses all of our nonprofit lines. And I think that we can say safely that we're all in agreement that that is an important issue for you to be aware of, because it will be coming for rules. And being able to have places on private lands where threatened and endangered species can continue to live versus being extirpated or essentially extinct on lands, and their habitat shrinking and shrinking to where they're just not going to exist anymore, let alone having safe passage from property to property, is a key issue for the New Hampshire Rivers Council as well. So I appreciate this time this morning, and I hope that you appreciate that you haven't had to sit through PowerPoint presentations, that we can look at each other in a well-lit room and have a conversation. So I am happy to answer questions, and we'll be following up with an email with a couple of links for you to click on at your leisure.
Senator McConkey.
Thank you, Madam. Ladies, thank you for being here. I especially enjoyed your conversation. I don't hear as much from the rivers, and hoping that you'll extend that invitation over to me, so I'd like to attend. Province Lake is a problem area, always has been. My 40 plus years I've lived in the area. Shallow water, storm water, roads running by, old septic systems. I did not realize the extent of the month plus over there. I was made well aware by many homeowners of weeks long. So that's troubling, but that's something that happens almost every year, and we need energy and we need money to make that in other places. I would like to engage with you after this. I think I also have a solution coming forward, funding long term, because the more and more I hear of this, the more I understand that it's a bigger pronged problem with, that we can work with DOT, DES, and some private funding. So don't have time after this meeting, but I'd like to engage you with legislation I have coming forward. And thank you for
Great.
the efforts you do as well as everyone else. It's something we have to have that sustainable fund, and I think we can get there.
Well, thank you. It's been a wonderful opportunity to have a conversation with you.
Michelle, I notice you're not wearing an orange badge. What is your status?
I am not wearing an orange badge because I am not a paid person. I am a citizen and serve on a volunteer basis for the New Hampshire Rivers Council.
Okay.
But I
thank you.
appreciate you bringing up that clarification. I don't want you to think I'm trying to fly under the radar. That's the freedom of not being paid, and it's also the bane of
Oh,
not
we
being
know
paid.
that.
Oh, I know you do. I don't even get $200. Can you imagine that?
I can. I have another question about cyanobacteria. There's at least one physician at Dartmouth who is investigating the link with ALS. And I wonder to what extent you guys are trying to work with the medical community as possible partners and funding sources.
That's a great question. And yes, there's a growing body of medical science out there showing a connection between water quality, ALS, cyanobacteria. We do partner with them, staying informed of their research. We have not directly engaged in any partnerships involving funding, but that's an interesting idea. Thank you.
I think they don't have any money, but they might be able to help you raise
Right.
money.
It's worth seeing if there's an opportunity there and an opportunity to leverage. So thank you.
Because I think when we talk about the dangers of cyanobacteria, it's not only the environmental, but it's the dangers to human health that are appearing more and more likely.
And I just want to add to that two things. One of them is that I had the displeasure of paddling through an immense cyanobacteria bloom on Lake Champlain and kayak everything covered with it and not feeling terribly well the next day. So I think that those connections are not necessarily addressed adequately. And I will say, Senator McConkey, you had brought this up as well, that I think that we have models for revolving funds that might help with these support services. So for instance, an investment now by the state of New Hampshire with some level of principal forgiveness, but then money's going back into that fund. I think that we have several models of those right now. Many of them are being used for management plans for lakes as well as for rivers. And so the ability for municipalities to apply for them, have some level of that debt forgiveness, and then putting funds back into the revolving fund, I think is a solution that we can explore, and they leverage other funds as they might be available. That's in flux right now, as you know, at the federal level. But I think that that model is very useful for the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sparing us from slides.
Does anybody else want to say anything? Matt looks like he wants to. He's just waiting to get to room 100.
Yeah, that's what.
But everybody else. Thank you all very much.
close the hearing.
But that will close this meeting of Senate Energy and Natural Resources.
Well done.